Robert's rules, someone needs to make a motion after you get through reading them.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next is a resolution authorizing a construction manager at risk. Contract with EMJ Construction for the South Broad District Ballpark project number D23-001-201, and authorizing pre-construction phase services in the amount of $206,000, $206,133, subject to availability of funds. Jermaine?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Jermaine Freeman, Interim Chief of Staff and Director of Economic Development for the city. So this process helps us to bring on the construction manager at risk, which is a key component of helping to get to the final cost of what will be the potential ballpark. And so the construction manager at risk will work closely with the architectural firm DHW, which you all passed a resolution on the last time we met. And as DHW goes through and prepares their architectural drawings, the construction manager at risk will work with them to make sure that we can get to a good quality design that is within a budget that we can all afford. And then we can go from there. And then that helps us to also stay on track in terms of the design and construction of the ballpark, which of course we are still shooting for and hoping to get open in time for opening day in 2025. But that is essentially the role that EMJ will be playing as the construction manager at risk for the Sports Authority.
Okay. Any other questions or any questions anybody has?
I guess the $206,000 that will be provided from the bond funds that will be issued for this project, correct, sir?
That is correct. The goal is that once the Sports Authority issues bonds for the construction cost, that EMJ, just like DHW, would be paid from the bond proceeds. That is correct.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Is there a timeline on how long their services would last?
Yeah, let me ask Bill to come up to address that. Bill is, of course, our chief engineer for the city, and he'll be working closely with them.
Good morning, everyone. So the timeline for the pre-construction services essentially will run through the majority of this calendar year because we anticipate the construction itself to actually, while there may be some early release packages that would be prepared in the coming months and go ahead and get started during 2023, the pre-construction services themselves are actually services that they will do alongside the architect for approximately the next 4 to 6 months. But it is a lump sum, so it will cover essentially everything that's needed for that time period in order for us to be able to get through that. So they will attend as many meetings as necessary, perform all the work that's necessary in order to help cost that out and provide recommendations and guidance to the design team as well in terms of selecting certain materials that may be more affordable and still achieve the same purpose, or construction methods that might actually, for example, use a different material but take a different amount of labor. Those sometimes the materials can decrease labor, sometimes labor can offset a cost on a material. But that's where we're bringing their expertise to the table during the design phase.
Would you mind describing, or summarizing what the pre-construction phase services are?
While they will be attending those meetings that I was describing, they will also be providing cost based on the drawings and the design phase. So as DHW is preparing certain portions of the work and certain portions of the document, there are multiple buildings and multiple different facilities that are there. And so as each one of those goes through their particular iteration, then EMJ is going to have an embedded cost estimator who will actually be looking at all those, and based on the level of detail, they will provide an appropriate cost estimate. As we get closer to final design, the amount of unknowns will go down, but they are very, very experienced in being able to price things out when there is they have an experience of knowing the things that are still needed, even though they may not be shown on the drawings. They do have a partner with them, subcontracting with them in the form of Brassfield and Gorey. Brassfield and Gorey has worked on several large stadiums as well, and so they will also be bringing some additional experience into that arena as well, specifically to stadium construction experience.
Thank you.
Mr. Payne, how does a construction manager at risk keep down the costs that might be involved in the bonds that will be issued by this body?
Certainly, that's a great question. Typically, on a municipal project, we would complete 100% of the design and then go forward to bids with contractors at that point. However, we won't know what their bidding price or what those prices are beyond sort of some industry standards that the designer may know or the owner may know at that point. And so we lose a lot of opportunity to be able to do value engineering until after the bidding. So in this case, because they will be embedded during the design phase, we'll actually be able to take advantage and be able to perform a lot of that value engineering during the actual design phase. So what it will result in is greatly reduce the likelihood that we have, an extravagantly priced set of design documents that really is unaffordable. Because we're going to be getting the very best and most current data on pricing, both in the labor market and in the materials market, which, as we all know, has been quite fluid, and there's been a lot of inflation pressures, particularly in recent months. So having them embedded, it also allows, as the contractor is able to price it, we will still have competitive pricing. So we will still be obtaining the same types of competition from highly qualified, highly skilled subcontractors throughout the project. So they will still be able to do that even as we get into later phases under the construction manager at risk contract. So and it will help us get to ultimately a guaranteed maximum price where we will be able to say this is the amount. As long as the scope doesn't change, this is the price that we expect to pay, no more than a certain amount of money, and we'll know that as we get further into the design process. But it will essentially eliminate a lot of that risk that happens many times at the design phase. I know from the city's perspective, we've had many jobs and contracts recently that when we've put them out to bid, we've anticipated a particular number, whether it's through our budgeting or through the estimating that was done by the designer. But then whenever we receive the bids from the construction companies, those bids have been significantly different. And so that has resulted in a lot of delays in projects being able to move forward. And so construction manager at risk is a practice that's available to this board, and we think that it's most appropriate for this project.
Thank you, sir.
Bill, I've got a question. As products are specified by the architects and engineers, are sustainability goals also a part of the thought process from the very beginning?
There will be a lot of thought process that gets particularly put into operations and maintenance. So there will be energy consumption components that will be looked at it as well as other materials pieces and operational pieces. What is the life cycle of the particular product that's being specified?
Is that part of what this at-risk construction manager does, or is there going to be a sustainability consultant hired to do that? I mean, we kind of have one in the city, Eric Smith. Is the city's director of sustainability. So I'm just wondering if those have been married together.
Not specifically, with Mr. Schmidt. There is, typically at least on this project, this is really more a combination of, because with the lookouts themselves being essentially the third-party beneficiary of the stadium that the Sports Authority would construct. So we will be working with them. So it's a combination. Sustainability in and of itself is really about what are the owner's requirements, the owner's expectations in conjunction with the designer. And so in this case, now by bringing on the construction manager at risk, we'll be able to take into account the combination of owner's needs, which is both there are sustainability components to what the owner needs, what the tenant needs, as well as the designer and the contractor. So in this case, we really have four parties, but we certainly will take a look at that. It's not officially incorporated. We've not had, as I say, Eric Schmidt directly involved in this, but it is a component of what we do when we manage projects.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Anything else? We vote on this, right?
Yes, sir. This will get you started.
All right, let's get us started. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Any other business?
This will be a staff presentation at this.
Right.
Good afternoon, members of the board. So today, we would like to offer a staff presentation. I'm actually going to sort of step aside to let some of our representatives from one of our community groups to come forward and to sort of talk about things that they have been working on in partnership with the private sector. And so as part of this process, essentially what you're going to hear today is sort of a set of asks and desires and sort of expectations, I think, from our community partners. It's important that you all as a Sports Authority board sort of understand what your role is in what you're about to hear. Legally, under state law, you cannot be a part or party to what is called a community benefits agreement. However, you do have the ability to hear community concerns. And so as you go through the process today, I'm sure that our friends, and I'll introduce them here in just a second, but they will have both things that they are asking for in terms of a formal community benefits agreement that they will be asking for from Hardball Capital, from Perimeter Properties, the landowner and the baseball team. That will be separate from sort of the community concerns that they will also present to you all, which you all as Sports Authority members can take into consideration as we move through this process. And so after they have an opportunity to present, if you all have any additional questions for me, please let me know and I'll be happy to come up. But I believe that Angelica, you gonna?
We actually have some awesome community leaders
Okay.
today. Caleb Sapp is going to enjoy the presentation.
All right, so we're going to have some folks from Caleb that are going to come up to talk about the things that they've been working on with the private partners, and we'll go from there. Jeffrey?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Chandra Ward, and I am speaking on behalf of Caleb this morning and the South Broad CBA Coalition today. Now, Caleb believes that development should happen with us, the community, and not to us. We know the city and the county see potential with this development and others in the future can have on South Chattanooga, and that they support the notion that communities should have a say in the benefits that this type of project may bring to their community through CBAs. With the support of the city and some of its officials, we were able to develop a coalition of local groups who are invested in and impacted by development within the TIP district. Now, currently where we are in the CBA process, as of today, is that we are in the beginning stages of negotiation and we look forward to making it to signing day. Now, why do we need a community needs assessment? We know that at its core, Caleb represents the interests of our community. So we want to know what they needed, and we asked them after 3 different community listening meetings and nearly 100 Chattanoogans later, we were able to identify several issues that were particularly important to South Chattanooga, labor unions, and other relevant stakeholders. Housing, so these stakeholders also include housing, environment, construction, education, and transportation. Over the course of the past 8 months, the coalition's negotiation team and Caleb's economic outlook or economic mobility task force leaders have met with the developers and representatives for the lookouts on several occasions. And while there have been negotiating for benefits with the developers and other stakeholders, there are community needs that cannot be committed to by any other party other than the city of Chattanooga. So we really need the city of Chattanooga's cooperation as well as various public entities. And while we know the city can't enter into a CBA officially, with the coalition, we feel it is necessary for the city to partner with the South Broad CBA Coalition to find creative solutions for the benefit of South Chattanooga and its residents. We remain hopeful that this project and the city and private stakeholders work together will bring about a new history for Chattanooga, really envisioning that one Chattanooga that the mayor has committed to around economic investment and local development.
Thanks, Chandra. My name is Jeff Meldal. I work with Caleb and the South Broad Community Benefits Coalition. I'm going to try to skip ahead slides here. So this is a rough timeline of where we are that Chandra just outlined. We are sort of in the middle there and looking forward to getting a CBA signed. And as the project goes forward, to working with y'all on sort of a separate understanding of how these community needs can be advocated for by the city and the county, by the Sports Authority, to ensure that the things that can't be formally agreed to in a CBA, but nevertheless are deeply felt community needs, are addressed. So I'm going to go through some of the specifics, but just to sort of reiterate what Jermaine and Chandra and other folks have pointed out, the complexities of a public-private partnership like this sometimes make it difficult to say who exactly is responsible for what. As the city engineer pointed out, you've got at least 4 different parties who are part of the decision-making process. The intended client, the city and the county as final client, the developer, and the vision of the broader development in South Chattanooga. So in its role as the final client for the stadium, the city and the county are represented by this board, and I know you all are volunteers and appointed, but you have significant power to ask good questions, as I've already seen you doing, and to make sure that the staff who are advising you and the city and county elected representatives have what they need in terms of knowledge of the community needs, the CBA process, and what their role can be in delivering these things for South Chattanooga. So I want to go into some of the things that specifically we feel the city has a strong role in advocating for during the stadium project. So here you see a slide from our CBA packet. I'm just going to quickly go through the items. As final client, we know that you all are not full-time construction managers. You're not full-time employees working on this project. But again, you can be good advocates for these things. And if you take this presentation into your minds and into your hearts and advocate for it, it'll make sure that these sort of things don't slip through the cracks, don't get brushed aside when the urgency of signing these contracts and getting this project done comes pressing in on us, as it's sure to do. So we want to ensure that the people who are doing this job are safe. We want to make sure this is done as much as possible by local workers. And as such, we're protecting the lives of Chattanoogans by making sure that there is strong safety standards on site. OSHA provides 10-hour and 30-hour trainings for workers and foremen. And this is an example of a basic measure that we can take. We can ensure, we can ask questions of our construction managers, of our subcontractors. Are you requiring this of your workers? And can we verify this? And thus, do we know for sure that these workers are going to be safe on this project? We want to make sure that this project provides opportunity for people in Chattanooga to get into these long-term, lucrative, stable jobs in construction that so often in the city we see, and city and county, we see go to out-of-town construction firms who come in, do one project, and then their workers take that money back to their own communities, whereas Chattonoogans who need this work and need this training and need these skills to have this kind of stable lifestyle that we want for all of our neighbors, we miss out on that when we don't have our own people being trained, getting job experience on our own projects. And we have the local resources to put people to work on these things, but often it takes an extra bit of advocacy to ensure that those local people are filling those jobs, getting that training. As such, we want to make sure that there's a local hiring plan, that the contractors who are coming in, whether or not they're from Chattanooga, have a plan to hire Chattanoogans. That's something that we can advocate for and constantly ensure is happening, because it's one of those things that's liable to slip through the cracks in the urgency to get things done. Wherever possible, we want to see these contracts go to diverse business enterprises, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and if such a business is not able to bid on a blanket or bid on a large contract, whenever possible, we want to see the packages broken down into contracts where smaller companies of the sort that Chattanooga has a lot of can actually bid on it, where they're not responsible for taking on more than they can handle, but they can still get a piece of the pie through a reasonably sized contract. In terms of the environment, we've already heard a little bit about that, but and we hope that these sort of good steps that have been taken to ensure that environmental safety is taken into account continue. We have great resources in green spaces and lots of environmental advocates and staff members within the city. I'm not going to go too deep into these needs, but we want to see a study ahead of time to make sure, this is a site where environmental horrors have occurred in the past. We want to make sure that none of the lingering effects of that are putting workers or the surrounding community at risk. We want to see what the impact of the new development will be on the environment, on the watershed, the city as a whole, and construction elements in the stadium enter into this. Is it going to retain its own stormwater? Is it going to have sustainable energy? Is it going to be creating more heat in the city? These are design considerations that, again, the city and county as final client can be strong advocates for. During the operations, we also hope that the intended lessee or the lookouts for that they are obtaining high standards of environmental practices during in the operation of the stadium, and we're very hopeful that they will meet those high standards, and we're happy that they're negotiating with us. But again, the city can have a hand in advocating for this as the owners of the stadium. Skip ahead to transportation. This is something that is critical to have city and county support. Lots of people have expressed anxiety about the effect that the stadium and the development will have on traffic in South Chattanooga, and whether folks from around Chattanooga will be able to access these new resources that we're putting in South Chattanooga. A multimodal transit center is something that folks I've heard advocated for years, a way to bring everything into sort of a hub. And that's, we're trying to create a new, almost from scratch, area of local interest, a new hub downtown. And if we have a sensible locus for the transit, whether it be bike, cars, if we have that in one place, sensibly designed with local needs really taken into account, that'll make a big difference in the usability of this stadium and the whole surrounding development. We need expanded bus routes. Obviously, the stadium area is currently not heavily residential, but we need to take into account the residential areas around there and recreate a sort of vision for CARTA's accessibility and usefulness to residents of that area. Connection with Howard School. Howard is, as you know, one of the most storied and respected schools in the South Side. It's got a lot of challenges with crowding and under-resourcing. And we want to ensure that Howard is connected to the jobs and opportunities that are going to come up around the stadium in as many ways as possible. So all that is to say, let's put together a comprehensive plan for this whole site that allows for local residents to take as much advantage of it as possible. And let's make sure it's safe, usable, and use it as a way to transform the way that we engage with public transit in the city. Finally, I'm just getting to the end here. Housing is a huge concern. It's a keystone of the mayor's plan for the city. It's a bit challenging issue. People are getting displaced as we speak all over Chattanooga from neighborhoods that they've lived in their whole lives because the market forces are out of control, and we need to do as much as we can as a city, as a county, to make sure that development where it's happening is not pushing people out of neighborhoods that they've lived in a long time, neighborhoods that they want to live in, and whether they're tenants or homeowners, make sure that they are benefiting from this growth and not experiencing it as pressure to leave, pressure to sell, pressure to change their circumstances that they may not otherwise want to change. So we want to connect long-term residents, especially people who are on fixed incomes, who live in the area that's going to be experiencing all this growth, to a tax freeze where the increase in taxes does not force them out of a situation in which they're comfortable. We want to have community rehabilitation support for residents who are already in the area. Big development means big changes. There are some communities in the area that could use positive changes, but we want it to be the sort of change that is community-driven and focused on the community needs. Finally, wherever we can, we want to provide incentives and assistance to overcome barriers in housing. There's interesting things going on with the West Side Evolves and other areas of the city, but we need more of that sort of thing. We need creative ideas, and we need to get help to people who are going to be affected by this. We know this is a big change. We know people are going to be affected, and we don't want them to slip through the cracks. We don't want these community desires to slip through the cracks as this project moves forward, as it's going to do at a rapid pace. I know a lot of this that I've just discussed is beyond the scope of what a volunteer board can do, but you have the power to advocate, to ask these questions, and to hold people accountable. A lot of bad projects and bad results from previous projects have come simply because when a critical decision was being made, nobody thought to ask a strongly worded question about, hey, what happened to these things we all said we cared about in the initial stages, And why has that been pushed to the side in favor of haste or efficiency or whatever? We hope that this project can be different, and your role in that is to make sure that these things don't just go by the wayside, that the questions get asked, that when you're signing that critical dispersal or whatever, you say, hey, let's check back in on those things that we said we were going to do, that the community needs us to do, and use your city and county staff support to push these things wherever you can. Really take the time to look at the packet that we've given you all and continue what's been your great stewardship of this big change in South Chattanooga. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff?
I've got an observation. I mean, you can't answer any questions for us, I don't think, but you've given us a lot of really, really good information. Both of you have. Thank you. Regarding traffic, that's kind of a hot button as a property owner down there myself for about 30 years. I get this question all the time. And right now we're in a transition. We're in a huge transition, just like MLK was and Main Street when they were evolving into what they are today. I'm kind of speaking to us too, that we really need to plan, not just for this stadium, but also for the stadium in the future, along and including Howard in that too. There's already on 26 one redeveloped streetway from Howard into this site that was done by the city a few years back. So we need to do pre-planning and planning and continually looking, but kind of laying out a groundwork that works in, 10 years or as far as we can anticipate what's going to be happening because of this ball field. It's going to really create a lot of traffic down there. And I think the traffic department is looking at all of that right now with Chestnut Street and a possible 28th or 29th Street or something like that. And I think we probably need to be, as that evolves, we might need to be brought up to date on that so that we can answer some questions. And I mean, I'm kind of just speaking to our board too. So I'm glad you brought that up and kind of laid it out. CARTA has a role in that too. So anyway, it's mainly a comment.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And
thanks for your
just
presentation.
asking those questions is going to be key for the city. As long as we are proceeding with the public bodies well-informed and the public itself well-informed, we won't be caught by surprise when we get a result that...
Yeah, and I don't want us to be caught by surprise on opening day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of we don't want that to be a tsunami and everybody's sitting down here on North Shore trying to get down here to South Rock.
Right. Something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, are there any particular ideas about, kind of you mentioned Howard Schools connection with partnerships there for student resources and kind of the things listed in the PowerPoint? Are we talking more employment opportunities for students or other programs that, are going to be using the stadium side or?
For sure. Yeah, and that is something that we're hoping is going to be in the sort of formal text of the CBA, something that the lookouts and as the users of the stadium can agree to is how are we going to get opportunities to local kids to become either part of this organization or learn through it how to do well-paid professional jobs. And yeah, we're hopeful that will enter into the text of a formal agreement with the lookouts and the folks who are going to be running the stadium. But we have in our coalition, we have great advocates who know a lot more about the Howard connection than I do. And the school board, Jill Black, has been party to the development of this process as well. So she would be a good resource for making those connections. But I know we have members here who maybe after the meeting can speak to what that specifically could look like. And even outside of the context of the CBA, certainly the advocacy of y'all and the city and the county will go a long way to making sure that those are really meaningful connections.
Thank you.
Anything else? I wanted to ask about, and here again, it goes back to Brett's question about Howard. How do you plan to involve Howard School in this particular I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Help me, Richard.
Project or
Project. How do you plan to get Howard involved in that, and what kind of activities are you talking about?
Well, that's sort of a little bit beyond my scope, but some of the ideas that we've discussed have been trying to get Howard students who are interested in pre-apprenticeship programs involved in a pipeline to getting some of these construction jobs that'll be coming up the next few years. And then in terms of getting jobs in administration or in contracting with the lookouts and the sort of companies that will be managing affairs in the stadium, that could be a sort of a separate feeder program where we're specifically targeting students going to Howard, making presentations, saying, look, if you might be interested in this, we might have an opportunity for you. But the sooner that we get sort of, the more that we get out the energy or the sort of idea that we want this project to be putting Chattanoogans to work in all aspects, from construction to operations, the more we can make that inevitable, we can make that happen. But it has to be very intentional, and I don't have a plan for the specifics of how it should work, other than it's one of those things that if we don't consistently advocate for it, it will go by the wayside. So if you have a particular interest in it, like I said, we have members, administrators, and staff at Howard who have been part of this process, who I know would be eager to connect and sort of flesh out what that could look like as we build through this process.
Well, it looks good to have Howard on the thing, but I don't want it to just be window dressing.
Exactly. That's sort of that's a key aspect of this whole thing. Is we don't want it to just be, yes, there was community involvement. We heard the community voices. We want concrete material benefits for the community members. We want people to say, my life changed for the better when that stadium came to town. So and I'm glad to hear you say that. We're not interested in window dressing. We're interested in real material benefits.
Okay, all right. Anything else? All right.
Thank you all so much.
One issue, I guess, on Jeff here, this board only has so much authority. I think that needs to be at least sort of laid out to you on
Yes.
here. This board cannot enter into a community benefits agreement under current law.
Absolutely. And I want to just reiterate what Jermaine said, and we are not asking for that. We are asking for y'all to be advocates for these things that fall outside of the community benefits agreement. That's why some things that we didn't mention are involved in a separate agreement with the lookouts. We're not asking for any legal agreement. We're asking for y'all in your capacity as board members to be advocates for these things.
And I think they can provide that input to the bodies. There are some things like multimodal transit centers here that cost money too, and we've got specific amounts of at least bond funding that can be involved, and it's a question about where does it go in those issues. And then the aspect of how far does it go within the tax increment financing districts that would be involved have to be considered by the city here. And then the housing concerns also, this board doesn't really have the ability to regulate that, but that is something that the Health, Education, and Housing Facilities Board or the city through its HUD financing may be able to assist on. So those are areas that are sort of outside this body's involvement. They definitely are listening and trying to figure out where they can go.
Yes, and thank you for that. And I realize that a lot of this stuff falls outside of the specific purview of this body. But again, it's one of those things where there's a lot of people involved, and the more people that are out there advocating for it, the better chance it has of manifesting.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else we have today?
Sir.
All right, do I have a motion to we adjourn?
Motion?
Anybody else second it?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right, then.
You got your work.